Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's study call. We're continuing on with our study of Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. Yesterday, we finished off chapter 9, which was How I Attracted to Myself $20,000. And she went through the story of her visualization of it, coming into contact with that creative power, that source from which everything comes from, and then how she went from there to actually creating the $20,000. And she said in that chapter that it took her about 6 weeks to do so. Now, I think that that is pretty fascinating, how quickly she was able to do that. Now, since yesterday and today, I looked up the purchasing power. Again, this book was written in around 1920, and I'm not sure exactly when this story actually happened. So it would have been, some years prior to her writing this book. But in 1920, so at the very least 1920, what $20,000 would have been worth is about $301,000 in our current day money. So this wasn't just a small amount of money that she was going towards. So imagine that in the next 6 weeks, you could create $300,000. How would your life change? What would be different? What would you do different? And so if the things that she's teaching, the principles that she's teaching here could do that for you, wouldn't you want to apply them? Wouldn't you want to pay attention to what these things could do for you? I know it makes me want to pay attention and to work and strive more. And now I've created a business where I've was able to use it to create about that amount of money, but in a year. And so I'm trying to take that amount and to create that in, a shorter period of time. And it's like yesterday we talked about, there's a step-by-step process that you're led from one thing to another. And so there are times when you're going to be moving forward very quickly, and there's going to be times of growth where it seems like you're just kind of moving along at a much slower pace, where you're just trying to apply some of these kinds of things. And so there's times and seasons to all of this. But once you learn these principles and you apply them and you keep moving forward, you can have the same results that she's having, because the same creative force that worked through her can work through you. It's just a matter of what you're willing to do. Remember, she was willing to take advantage of whatever opportunities came her way and to move forward in them. A lot of times we stop the creative process and its power because we are not willing to do the things that show up in our life. We're not willing to take care of the things that are already there. And so it's kind of the idea that if you're not taking care of what you already have, why would the universe, why would God, which is this creative power that wants to create more and continue to be expanding, why would it give you more? Now, some of you may not know this, some of you may, but there's an interesting idea that was first established amongst the Hebrews, that part of their law is that when a man came of age, that he was to be given property. And now he could take that property and he could use it for his own benefit, he was a steward over that land. And now if he was a wise steward and he increased himself, that he could then be given more land. They called it quickened. If he could quicken that land and make more of it, then he would be given more land. But if he was given land and he wasn't able to use it, then that land was actually taken away from him, so that then it could be given to another person that could use it wisely. And it's the same principle that is supposed to be used in all of these things, that if we have something that we're not using, that thing will be taken from you. But if you magnify and you use what has been given to you and you use it for the benefit of not only yourself, but others around you, more will be given to you, and more and more and more. And so to be able to use more, we have to become more ourselves. And so that's part of what this process will do, that when you hold in your mind the vision of you want with that uplifted emotion, those opportunities that are going to come to you are going to be opportunities for you to improve upon yourself, for you to become more than what you are, so that then you can use more. Because if you can't use more, it's going to be taken away. They call this the law of Matthew, because it comes from the book of Matthew in the New Testament, and it's the law of the parable of the talents, that someone was given a talent, they went and hid it, and so it was taken away from them. Another person was given 2 talents, and they improved upon it, and then 2 more talents were given to him. A person was given 5 talents, and they used it wisely, and so 5 more talents were given to them. And it's so they call it this law of Matthew because they've actually been able to see it. What's the term? Economists and people that study finances and money and the flow of those kinds of things recognize that money tends to flow towards those that are able to use it and magnify it, and it tends to flow away from people that don't know how to use it and just squander it about. And so just keep that in mind when you're going after the things that you want. It doesn't have to be money. It could be some other kind of resource, or it could be relationships, or it could be your health. That when you know how to use those things properly, more will come to you. All right, so let's hop into chapter 10, how I became the only personal pupil of the greatest mental scientist of the present day. As soon as the idea of studying with Troward came to me, I asked a friend to write to him for me, feeling that perhaps my friend could put my desire in better or more persuasive terms than I could employ. To all the letters written by this friend, I received not one reply. This was so discouraging that I would have completely abandoned the idea of becoming Troward's pupil, except for the experience I had that day on the street when my whole world was illuminated, and I remembered the promise, all things whatsoever thou wilt, believe thou hast received, and thou shalt receive. Now that last little quote comes from the Bible. It comes from the New Testament, and you find this statement actually all over through the Old and New Testament, that whatsoever thou believest, you can have. It will come to you. And I have a mentor of mine that really went heavily on this idea that all you have to do is believe. You just have to believe. And there is a lot of truth in that, because we create the world around us not based off of what the world is, but about who we are, the belief system that we have in us. So if we believe a certain thing about ourselves, we believe a certain thing about our world, we start to create that out in our outer environment, and the world around us takes that shape. And so just remember that idea is that you don't see the world as it is, but you see the world as you are, according to the belief system that you have inside of you. And so that promise that whatever you believe, you can have, you can receive, is so very true. With this experience in my mind, my passage to England was arranged. Notwithstanding the fact that apparently my letters were ignored, we wrote again, however, and finally received a reply, very courteous, though very positive. Troward did not take pupils. He had no time to devote to a pupil. Notwithstanding this definite decision, I declined to be discouraged because of the memory of my experience upon the day when the light and the thought came to me. I am all the substance there is. I seemed to be able to live that experience over at will, and with it there always came a flood of courage and renewed energy. We journeyed on to London, and from there telegraphed Troward asking for an interview. The telegraph was promptly answered by Troward, setting a date when he could see us. So she set out for England with basically she had not gotten any reply, and then she got one reply saying, I don't take students. But she went to England anyway with the idea that I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to go and see if I can become his student. And then when they got there, they telegraphed him and got a reply that he would actually meet with them. So that's progress. So the original was nothing. Then it went to a reply saying, I'm not going to take you on as a student. I don't take students, to now, okay, I'll hear what you have to say. So there's another story in the Bible, another parable that was given by Christ. It was by the person that kept praying over and over again, asking and asking and asking. They kept going to the judge, I think is how the parable goes, and asking for recourse from the judge. And they bothered the judge so much, the judge was like, fine, do what you will. And that's sometimes the course that we need to follow in our life, that no doesn't necessarily mean no, that we continue moving on and pressing forward with the belief that we can create whatever it is that we want, because a no from one person might be a yes from another person. And many people that are very successful, especially you take things like acting and music and some of those kind of industries, that many people get very many no's before they finally get yeses. And it's the same for us when we're wanting to create something, that we might hit upon no, closed door here, but there will always be another door open to us where we can then go and try it. And this process isn't, we might think, well, why doesn't God or this creative power just take us towards that one thing, the thing that's going to give us that yes? And sometimes it may, but remember, this process that we're going through isn't just about the end result. It's about helping us become something more than what we are along the way. So sometimes those no's help us in our growth. They help us to strive more. They help us to become more, because maybe the no is that we're not ready, that we need to improve. So we work on that, we improve, and then we come back. And then once we've improved, maybe it turns from a, well, maybe, and then we improve more, and then we come back and it's a yes this time. So remember, the no's aren't necessarily a no just because we're never going to get it. They might be a no for the now. Go improve, go become more, become better yourself. At this time, Troward was living in Rouen Manor, a little out of the way place in the southern part of England, about 20 miles from a railway station. We could not find it on the map, and with great difficulty, Cook's touring agency in London located the place for us. There was very little speculation in my mind as to what Troward would say to me in this interview. There always remained the feeling that the truth was mine, also that it would grow and expand in my consciousness until peace and contentment were outward as well as inward manifestations of my individual life. So again, as she's going about this process, she's holding in mind that belief that this is going to happen. She's holding that vision in her mind of studying with Troward, of being his pupil, and she's continuing moving on. So she's meeting difficulties along the way, but she's finding ways to overcome those difficulties. When she couldn't find where he was living herself, she sought help from another person that could tell her how to go and find the place where she's looking for. And so sometimes when we meet with difficulties, we meet with obstacles in our life, sometimes we might have to reach out to others for help. We might have to use their expertise in finding out what it is that we are striving for. So this isn't something that we do all by ourselves either. It is something that we want to leverage, so to speak, the abilities and powers that other people have. But remember, all along the way, that these things are going to be for other people's benefits too. Them helping you is going to be for their benefit. Maybe it's a financial one where you're going to pay them money, or it might be that they're just, blessing you. And in turn, because they're blessing you, they are then going to be blessed by this creative power in some other way in their life. We arrived at Troward's house in a terrific rainstorm and were cordially received by Troward himself, whom I found, much to my surprise, to be more the type of a Frenchman than an Englishman. I afterward learned that he was a descendant of the Huguenot race, a man of medium stature with rather a large head, big nose, and eyes that fairly danced with merriment. After we had been introduced to the other members of the family and given a hot cup of tea, we were invited into the living room, where Troward talked very freely of everything except my proposed studies. It seemed quite impossible to bring him to that subject. Just before we were leaving, however, I asked quite boldly, "Will you not reconsider your decision to take a personal pupil? I wish so much to study with you." To which he replied with a very indifferent manner that he did not feel he could give the time it would require for personal instruction, but that he would be glad to give me the names of 2 or 3 books which he felt would not only be interesting, but instructive to me. He said he felt much flattered and pleased that I had come all the way from America to study with him. And as we walked out through the lane from his house to our automobile, his manner became less indifferent. A feeling of sympathy seemed to touch his heart, and he turned to me with the remark, "You might write to me, if so inclined, after you get to Paris, and perhaps, if I have time in the autumn, we could arrange something, though it does not seem possible now." So again, as we're going on in this book she's coming across no, 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 but she keeps pressing forward until at that point she got a, well, maybe. She got a maybe. And here again, he's giving her something that she can go do. He's giving her some books that she can go study. Now, let's say that she goes and she doesn't read those books, but she just continues to pester him, wanting to be his student. But she hasn't done anything of what he has asked him, because him asking her to go read those books, he has in a way already accepted her as his pupil. He has given her a task to go do. Now she needs to go do it. But how many times in our own life where we're going after something and we're met with an obstacle, and the obstacle says, go do this first, we throw up our hands and say, oh, it's no good. I want this. And if I can't have this, I'm not going to do anything else. But we get stuck so much in that rut of fixated on this is the way that it has to be, that we're not flexible in going after and doing those other side things that we need to do. Just this example popped in my head. If any of you at all play video games, a lot of times in video games, especially if it's a bigger video game, you have this main storyline. And the main storyline is, some big task and some big boss at the end that you have to overcome, or something that you have to do at the end. Excuse me. And as you're going along the way through this main storyline of this video game, you'll often come across challenges which you're not capable of overcoming. You haven't advanced enough in your own personal development in the storyline of the video game. Your character isn't advanced enough to overcome what's there, or you don't have some kind of resource that's necessary. And so there pops up these side quests, they call them. It's not part of the main storyline. It's not part of the main quest, but it's these side quests that you go do. And you go do those side quests. And as you accomplish those side quests, you gain greater experience and greater power as a character. Or going and doing that side quest, you might gain some kind of tool or some kind of object that helps you in progressing towards the main storyline. So it's the same. Our lives follow sometimes that same kind of pattern where we're going after that main quest. We're going after that main objective. And as we're going along, we get to an obstacle and we're not sufficient to meet that obstacle. We can't overcome it in the state that we are now. And so life kind of takes a little bit of a detour, and we have to go over here and we have to go through these side quests and we have to do these other things before we can come back to that original thing and then continue on and continue moving forward. And so she's kind of meeting with these kinds of obstacles. And so just pay attention to when it's a no. Look at what else that you can do, what else is in your environment, so that you could possibly improve yourself and come back to that thing again and again, so that maybe you can get a yes or a maybe. I lost no time in following up his very kind invitation to write. My letters were all promptly and courteously answered, but there was never a word of encouragement as to my proposed studies. Finally, about 2 months later, there came a letter with a question in it. What do you suppose is the meaning of this verse in the 21st chapter of Revelation? And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. Instinctively, I knew that my chance to study with Troward hung upon my giving the correct answer to that question. The definition of the verse seemed utterly beyond my reach. Naturally, answers came to my mind, but I knew intuitively that none was correct. I began bombarding my scholarly friends and acquaintances with the same question. Lawyers, doctors, priests, nuns, and clergymen all over the world received letters from me with this question in them. Later answers began to return to me, but intuition told me that none was correct. All the while I was endeavoring to find the answer for myself, but none seemed to come. I memorized the verse in order that I might meditate upon it. I began a search of Paris for the books Troward had recommended to me, and after 2 or 3 days' search, we crossed the river Seine to the Ile-de-City to go into some of the old bookstores there. They were out of print, and these were the best places to find them in. Finally, we came upon a little shop that had the books there. These were the last copies the man had. Consequently, the price was high. While remonstrating with the clerk, my eye rested upon the work of an astrologer, which I laughingly picked up and asked, "Do you think Professor would read my horoscope?" The clerk looked aghast at the suggestion and responded, "Why, no, madame, this is one of France's greatest astrologers. He does not read horoscopes." In spite of this answer, there was a persistent impulse within me to go to the man. The friend who had accompanied me in my search for the books remonstrated with me and tried in every way to dissuade me from going to the famous astrologer, but I insisted, and she went with me. When we came to his office, I found it somewhat embarrassing to ask him to read my horoscope. Nevertheless, there was nothing to do but put the question. Reluctantly, the professor invited us into his paper-strewn study, and reluctantly and almost impatiently asked us to be seated. Very courteously and coldly, he told me that he did not read horoscopes. His whole manner said, more clearly than words could, that he wished we would take our departure. So I know we haven't kind of gotten to the end point of this little detour that she's taking to this guy with the horoscope, but I mean, there's some purpose here. There's a reason why she's telling us, and it's part of the story. It's part of the thing that's leading her on in this, that you'll find that when you're going after the thing that you want, you'll get sudden bursts of inspiration. You'll get the thought to go and do something. You'll get the thought to go and go somewhere. Pay attention to these ideas. Don't just toss them out, but take advantage of them. Go and do those things. Some of them may come to naught, and they may have just been a passing thought in your mind, but some of them might be actual things that will lead you towards what it is that you want. So just pay attention to them. Pay attention to these thoughts of inspiration that come to your mind, because they very well likely may lead to you to the thing that you're going after, the thing that you're wanting. My friend stood up. I was at a great loss what to do next, because I felt that I was not quite ready to go. Intuition seemed to tell me there was something for me to gain there. Just what it was, I was unable to define, so I paused a moment, much to my friend's displeasure, when one of Professor's enormous Persian cats jumped into my lap. "Get down, Jack," the professor shouted. "What does it mean?" he seemed to ask himself. Then, with a great interest than he had hitherto shown in me, the professor said with a smile, "Have never known that cat to go to a stranger before, madame. My cat pleads for you. I also now feel an interest in your horoscope, and if you will give me the data, it will give me pleasure to write it out for you." There was a great feeling of happiness in me that he made this statement. He concluded by saying, "I do not feel that you really care for your horoscope." The truth of this statement shocked me, because I did not care about a horoscope, and could not give any reason why I was letting him do it. However, he said, "May I call for your data next Sunday afternoon?" All right, we're getting to the end here. Let me just see if we can finish this story, and then we'll end off our call today, and we'll continue on with this chapter tomorrow. On Sunday afternoon at the appointed time, the professor arrived, and I was handing him the slip of paper with all the data of my birth, etc., when the idea came to me to ask the professor for the answer to the question about the 16th verse of the 21st chapter of Revelation. The thought was instantly carried into effect, and I found myself asking this man what he thought this verse meant. Without pausing to think it over, he immediately replied, "It means, the city signifies the truth, and the truth is non-invertible. Every side from which you approach it is exactly the same. Intuitively and undoubtingly, I recognize this answer as the true one, and my joy knew no bounds, because I felt sure that with this correct answer in my possession, Troward would accept me as his pupil in the fall." So again, these little bursts of inspiration, these little ideas that we have to go and do something, are trying to lead us on towards us getting the answers, us creating what it is that we want. Now, she had reached out to all of her friends, family members, acquaintances, people that she knew, to try to get an answer to it. And it just so happened that it came about in this way. So one, she was following what Troward had told her to do, to get these books, to study them. And along her way, as she was going to get those things, some other little thing happened. And you'll find these serendipitous events happening when you're trying to create in your life, that things will happen, things will come about, that you'll be moved along from one thing to the next, and you'll be able to create what it is that you want in your life. And this is such a wonderful process, and you'll be amazed at the things that happen to you, because you'll look back and you'll look at the things that have happened and be like, that is so crazy. I've had these things happen in my own personal life where I was led from one thing to another. I had an idea in my mind and I knew that that was what I should go do. And I went and did it. And then it led me to the next thing and the next thing. And it evolved into me coming to a place in a position to where just, it was like knowledge was poured out upon me. And it was something that I didn't know that I was looking for that, but it was everything that I was looking for. And so if you just follow those little promptings, those little things along the way, they will guide you to what it is that you're looking for and what you want out of life. And it will be this great unfolding in your life. All right. There's a little bit more about the story of the astrologer, but we'll leave it there and go into, there's a letter that she receives from Troward that we'll get into tomorrow to finish off this chapter. Let's see, chapter 10, right? Yeah, we're in chapter 10. So with that, go and make yourselves a wonderful day. Continue to visualize in your mind, have that uplifted emotion for what you're wanting. Pay attention to what's showing up in your life. Create order out of what is already in your life, and more things will be presented to you. The next step will be shown along the way. And as you take advantage of those things, you will create for yourself a wonderful day. And with that, we'll end our call, and I will say bye for now.